Or as you access this this Google slide presentation that's part of the shared screen right now, it has those previous slides, and this Google slide presentation is actually the tool you use to teach this online. And in the first part, the part A, it's an interactive process where you share a copy of this slide presentation to the participants, and they actually can manipulate some of the slides, or they can talk to you and you can do the manipulation. And I'm going to do a quick review of what we did last week. Just in the chat though, or you can unmute yourself and tell me, how many of you were here last week? So I see Maggie was.
Leah.
And okay, Leah was. Anyone else?
Sarah, I was.
Sarah, and okay. That's so okay. So most people were not here last week. And so in the part A, I call it the nut bowl activity. It doesn't say that if you open up the guide. And this is what it looks like. Here's the Project Wild Guide. This is the 4th edition, the 2018 edition. And this is the first page of the activity. The activity was rewritten. So if you have an older copy, 2017 or earlier, the activity Sustainability Then Now Later is different than this one. You can still use the slide even if you don't have the new book, but the directions won't be quite the same. And the part A that we did last week, it's not even in there. So this nut bowl activity is a simulation of how to share or how to hoard natural resources, and what happens if you share or hoard them. If you share them and use them responsibly, they can regenerate. If you hoard them, they run out and you don't have any tokens to trade in for the reward. We used these slides from the Project Wild Token Bank, and these slides can be, these virtual tokens can be deleted by the activity facilitator, or if you share the Google slide, so any of the participants have access to it, that is editing access, they can do it themselves. So it can work both ways. Whenever you do Project Wild activities using Google apps like Google Slides or Google Documents, Google Forms, and you share those documents, you have options to share them in view-only mode, or you can share them so people can comment but they can't change the content, or you can share them so they can edit it. If they edit it, it gives you more power to be interactive, but it also is riskier because any change one person makes, it changes the view for everybody. Okay, and so whenever you do a Project Wild activity using these Google apps that we've developed, you want to make a copy for yourself and save it as like your own master copy. And then before you teach it, make another copy, put the date on it, and then share it to the folks you're going to teach. You can either share it in advance of the training or the class session, or you can share it to them during the session, which is what we'll do in a bit. So this is a copy of the one we did last week. And this was the first slide with instructions and what the activity looks like. And I talked about the nut bowl and our virtual tokens that we claim. So each person got to go around and tell me how many tokens they wanted to take out of the nut bowl. And they knew that whatever tokens were remaining in the end in the nut bowl, that I would put that many tokens back in at the end of the round when the music stopped playing. But if all the tokens got used up, then we couldn't go on. And they had to get at least 10 tokens to trade their tokens in for a reward, such as, a raisin or an M&M or whatever you ask people to bring to the activity. When you're doing it in person, you can have some other rewards, stickers, other food items. If you're using food items, be sensitive, do it in a way to where the food items can be eaten afterwards, because we don't want to have things you can eat and then end up throwing them away. Okay, there's instructions on how many tokens to use based on how many participants you have. Um, and if you read the activity in the book, this will all make a lot more sense, although you could probably figure it out just from the slides if you read it through. These were the rules for the simulation. Okay, and then we followed it with discussion. What did the simulation of sharing these tokens, what was it like in real life? How was it different than real life? Yeah, it was like how people share natural resources like forests and um, which resources are renewable, which are not. Is wildlife a natural resource that people use? Is it renewable? You know, and yes, and yes, and yes. Okay, and now on to part B. So part B really changes directions, and part A set the stage for understanding um, and working with natural resources and understanding the implications for sharing and hoarding. In part B, we get into the written word, we get into literature. In fact, next week at the conference for the North American Association for Environmental Education, I'm going to be doing a presentation on this activity, but I'm going to link it to using novels, novels to explore really complex, difficult, systematic problems that there is no easy solution for, that we call wicked problems. One of those wicked problems is climate change. How can we use literature, novels in particular, to teach about wicked problems like climate change? And so this activity is kind of a lead into that. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to go that deep today. We're going to look at it, something that we can do in an hour, and that is look at some short passages, some texts that were written in different times in history to better understand what sustainability is and how looking into different times, the past, the present, and the future, is important for understanding sustainability. Okay, if anyone ever wants to jump in and ask a question, feel free. So, what I would like you to do for this sustainability, part B, charting sustainability through time, is, and this, by the way, is again a picture of the activity, the first page from the book. I think I missed something. Hold on. There it is. Okay. You might have already done this if you were reading the slide. I want you to write, as it says at the bottom of the slide, write your beginning definition of sustainability. So I'm going to give you about 40 seconds and I'm going to pause. And don't worry if you are stumped, you'll have a chance to rewrite it later. I'm not going to force you to share your beginning definition of sustainability, but if you want to, I would encourage it. So take the next 40 seconds and write down what you think sustainability means. I'm setting my timer. Okay, about 10 more seconds. Okay. Um, Now this is the tricky part because I can only see a few people, but if you want more time, you can text me. If you're good, I see a few thumbs up. Okay. And when I say text me, you can type it in the chat. I need more time or, okay. So would anybody like to share their beginning definition of sustainability? In fact, you can, if you would like to share, you can unmute yourself or you can type it in the chat. And if you read it out loud, I might type it in the chat for you. Okay, we have from Teresa, consideration of the present and future needs of all living things. Good.
I just said the ability to maintain.
Okay, great. And I'm going to jump ahead here and um, start putting a few of these in. Any others? Use of resources in a way that they are not used up. Good. Okay. All right, that should do for now. All right. Now, imagine with different audiences, you'll get very different um, takes on what sustainability is. With some audiences, it might be good to talk about the word sustain. What does that mean? And and then what does it mean to be able to sustain? And soon after that, it gets very philosophical. That's a good starting point. All right. So now we're going to take a look at life of a student in the year 1900, 1960, and 2019. And I'm going to read to you these three passages. It's going to take a little time. And while I'm reading, you're going to take some notes. There's a way you can actually read along with these, and that is these three URLs. In fact, I'll paste them in the chat. Oops, sorry. Hold on just a moment. And you're welcome to open them if you want, but don't feel obligated to. You will have a copy of this presentation before we go. I'll share to you the link and you can access it directly and make a copy. But if you want to read along on a bigger copy, or not, I'm going to pull it up on the shared screen, but if you want a bigger copy to read, here are the shared links in the chat. Wait a minute, did I get it all? Nope, let me try that again. Still didn't get it all. One more time. Okay, so I'm sorry, but I I pasted too many things. There's three links that you need, and one of them got pasted twice. Two of them got pasted twice, but one of them ends with 1900. One of the links ends with 1960, and the other one ends with 1919. So those are the three you need. You don't have to open the 1900 one twice or three times. And in fact, as I said, you don't have to open them at all. All right, now there is a link that I do want you to open, and that is, I made a copy of this charting sustainability through time sheet before we started. And once you have the copy of the whole presentation, you will have the link to the master copy. But for today, I want you to open the this one, and I'll paste this into the chat so you can copy and paste it. And I'll start off by saying for today. Okay, there's the link. You could also open up a separate window and type it in. So what you need to do is, open up a browser window. If you happen to be signed in to a Gmail account, and you can do it with Google Chrome, my experience is that tends to work best when you're using Google Apps and you start sharing things. There's less hiccups along the way, but if you can't, it should work anyway. Okay, and I'm going to pull that. I have it up already here. Oh, and I think, let's see. Yes, this is today's version. I see by the date on it that I put on. Now, I'm going to show you how I share it. And I know many of you are already familiar with this, but if you're not familiar with using these, Google Apps or other shared apps, Microsoft is starting them now as well. But you go to the share button at the top of the screen, and it tells me who has permission to use it. So the bottom window says get link. I'm going to click there, and I'm going to change it from where it says America's Wildlife Association for Resource Education. That's the nonprofit, educational nonprofit connected with Project Wild and the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. That's currently the owner of this Google Doc. So I'm going to click on that and double click on it and make sure, wait a minute. Okay, there we go. And then click the choice for anyone with the link. Okay, so anyone with the link, and I'm going to change it from a viewer to an editor. So now if you have that link, you can edit this document, so be careful. Now, if you're working with a group of younger students, and if there's any way to do it where they all have a Google account, like a Gmail or a Google enabled account, like they're working through Google Classrooms, then you can see who's editing what. But if people are not logged into a Gmail account, you can't, or a Google enabled account, you can't really see who's doing what. And when you open this stuff to use, I highly recommend using a Gmail or a Google account. Set one up with Gmail and go to Google Drive and set up a folder for this content. Because if you do it without a Google account, it doesn't work as well. Okay.
Hey, Mark,
Yes.
can you share this version again? I think the first one you shared is actually the master.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That happened last time too. That's really strange because I was working. So the version that you should see, it should say at the end copy 10/08/2020, but yours doesn't say that, does it?
It says master copy.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, let me try that again. And that's okay. Let's see what happens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the link. So I must have given you the wrong, that's what happened. I gave you the wrong URL. Sorry, folks. Okay, correction. This is the correct URL. Okay. Wait. Something doesn't look right there. Nope. Disregard that one. Let's try it one more time. Because that one has a tiny URL attached. I don't know how that happened either. One thing about doing these online activities, it goes slow this way. Once you get it set up and run it a few times, it goes faster, but you have to allow the time for it. Okay, try this one. So the one I just sent, look for the portion, in my text, the one, it starts off with the https://docs.google, etc. Open that one in a separate window. Okay, and I see we've got, most people are here. Okay, so I think, yeah, okay. So 6 of you are there, and I know at least one person might not be online to be able to do this, but if you can see it, that should help. Here are the instructions. First, I'm going to read the passage from 1900. When I read that, I want you to try to make some notes in these 4 columns. You might hear me read about things that relate to how the people in the passage use water, or you might hear something about how they get around, their transportation, or what is their energy use like, or what kind of food and drink are they talking about, and record your observations in one of the cells. So for example, if they're talking about transportation, pick one of the cells, just click in it and start typing, okay? And your note might say something like, traveling on a bicycle, or, it might be an opinion like, wow, that sounds really old-fashioned, traveling by horseback, or you might ask a question. Really, it's open-ended here, but the idea is for you to capture your thoughts and your observations about the passage and what you notice about this particular time period regarding how people used water, how they how their transportation worked, their energy use, and the food and the drink they consumed. Okay, so now I'm going to open up my first passage here, Life of a Student in the year 1900. And thumbs up if you can see that on the shared screen. Okay, it's probably too small to read, but here goes. Dear Grandmam, hello, how are you doing? Our new teacher in the schoolhouse has asked that we send a dictation to some of our kin. This is why I am writing to you today. Today was a relatively good day as I was able to finish hauling in the water from the outside pump before the sun came up over the prairie. This gave me extra time to help Pa light the new gas lamps in the cabin. Pa says that by and by, the entire town will use these new gas lamps. As usual, I walked to school today with my two younger sisters and my friend, Fred, who you met last year at the barn raising. Fred can sometimes be wiry, but in a pinch of the game, he is a good friend to me. Just a few moments ago, he came in from midday break. In my lunch pail today, Ma packed me a great lunch with the last of the ham we butchered from Uncle Dan's house, wrapped up in the slapjack leftover from breakfast. After lunch, my classmates gathered apples in the pasture behind the school for a treat before we came inside for afternoon lessons. While out there, a deer ran behind the trees. Most of us had never seen a deer. They're getting very scarce around our parts. Tonight, I will get to ride home in Mary's buggy. Not many people have a buggy in our town, so I'm excited to ride in one for the first time. This will let me get home faster for evening chores, finishing up chopping the wood. It's easier to work in the evening wind now that Ma has sewn patches over the holes in my overalls. I hope our paths cross this year. In love and family, Dakota. Okay, so I see several of you have been writing into the charting sustainability table. Under water use, we have water pump from the well. Children had to pump the well water. Transportation, okay, we have people made notes about walking to school, a buggy. Buggies were rare, okay. And then for energy, gas lanterns as a new item, wood for burning, chopping wood. Food and drinks included ham and apples, slapjacks, question mark, which a lot of people these days might think are synonymous with flapjacks. I do. I don't know if they had an actual different meaning though. Apples, pickled apples during school time. Okay, let's move on to 1960. All right, this one is addressed to Grandfather Herman, 1414 Herman Lane, Herman, Alabama, 77887. Dearest Grandfather, in my studies today, we have been instructed to send correspondence to a family member using the new typewriter in the school. I hope this message finds you well. Today was a standard day for the most part. After washing up and eating breakfast, I rode 10 minutes on my bicycle to school. However, I took a different route and got to school a few minutes late. The students who took the bus went inside, but I started the day clapping erasers outside as soon as the bell rang at 8:30 a.m. I was particularly upset about this because Mother just purchased for me a new pair of saddle Oxfords, and I do not like for them to get dusty. Some rowdy boys started throwing their cheese sandwiches in the lunchroom today. I'm sure their mothers did not approve of that after they likely spent all of that time last night packing their sons' lunches. The discipline attendant quickly stopped the food fight and assigned the boys to washing blackboards after school. I think wasting their lunches and being hungry all afternoon would have been enough punishment. I quickly exited the chaos, but the water fountains have such low pressure here at the school, I could barely get enough to drink. So I returned to the classroom thirsty for the afternoon. The afternoon did get much better. We did get to finish our studies early today as a light bulb blew out, and since this takes quite a while to fix, we were instructed to put our journals away for the day. Then, on my bicycle ride home, I watched about a dozen deer feeding on the edge of the meadow. I'm glad our dog Max wasn't with me. He's scared of other wild animals. I was impatient to get home because my favorite television program comes on at 4 p.m. on Wednesdays. I got to watch for a whole half hour with no interruptions from my little brother. With love and warmest regards, Ansel. Okay. So, taking a look at our chart, what did you all say? For water use, okay, water fountain, low water pressure. I don't know about you, but yeah, back in the early 70s, that happened to me a bunch of times, going back to class thirsty because of the low water pressure. Washing up was also for water use, drinking water from a fountain, washing blackboards. Does everyone know what clapping erasers and washing blackboards means? Okay. Okay, for transportation, we have bicycle, bike, bus, bicycle, bike to school, bus. All right. Energy use, light bulb blew out. Light bulbs, electric televisions, TV, and electricity. All right. Food and drink, cheese sandwiches, cheese sandwiches, cheese sandwiches. Pepsi, Pepsi, just kidding. Okay. Let's move on. All right, life of a student, year 2019. And this, as we can see from the heading, is an email from Chris Smith, ksmith at iqmail.com, sent Monday, August 1st, 2019, 2:32 p.m. to Grandma Neva, Grandma Neva at grandma.com. Subject, regarding my school life. Dear Grandma, how are you? I hope you are well. My teacher gave us a homework assignment in which we write a letter to one of our family members about our day at school. So this morning I woke up at 7 in the morning, brushed my teeth, washed my face, and put on my school clothes, a pair of jeans, a t-shirt, and white Converse sneakers. Then I had a bowl of cereal for breakfast. All of a sudden, Mom started yelling at us to hurry up and finish eating because the school bus was coming. I ran to the bus and sat on one of the middle seats, about 5 seats behind the first row. Usually kids play music and talk loudly on the bus, but today we had quite a ride. After an hour-long bus ride, we arrived at our middle school. My teacher is Mrs. Henderson. Everyone says she looks like Beyonce. Mrs. Henderson is very smart and wants all of her students to do their best, so I hope I get an A on this paper. The school day was uneventful, just like the bus ride. Even lunch was pretty average. At 11:30 a.m., we headed to the lunchroom. We got online and picked up plastic trays. For lunch, we had grilled cheese with bologna, chocolate chip cookies, and a choice of milk, chocolate milk, or a variety of fruit juices. When I bit into my sandwich, it was soggy and nasty, so I threw it away with the other leftover lunch that was piled up in the trash can. Thank goodness Dad packed Lunchables in my backpack. I prefer Lunchables over school lunch. They're more delicious and easy to carry. At 2:45 p.m., the school bell rang and they dismissed us from class. Instead of getting on the school bus, I waited for Dad to pick me up from gymnastics. It's about a half-hour drive to the gym with traffic, and Dad drives very carefully because there are lots of deer on the road. Dad and I picked up dinner on the way home and saved time since I still needed to get my homework done after gymnastics. If I'm lucky, I will have enough time to relax and watch some Netflix after I send this letter off to you. Well, Grandma, this is the end of my letter. This was my last homework assignment of the day, and I hope you enjoyed reading it. Love, Chris. Okay, so let's look at what you all said about life in the student of 2019. Water use, wash his face and brush his teeth, wash his face. Okay, good. School bus for transportation, bus, driving, school bus, private cars, long commutes. Good, okay. Energy use, computer with email, gas in car, Netflix, music on the bus, email, Netflix. All right. Food and drink, cereal, chocolate chip cookies, bologna, chocolate chip milk, cookies, soggy sandwich, Lunchables, gross. Interestingly, he thought this, or she thought the school lunch was gross. Cereal, plastic tray. Okay, interesting. Grilled cheese, bologna, milk, cookies, juice, milk, Lunchables, processed foods, fast food. Went from butchered meats to processed food. Aha! So there's an observation of the change over time. Okay, so what other changes might you observe over time with the water, the transportation, the energy, and the food? Any other changes you noticed over time? And feel free to unmute yourself at this point or type in the chat.
The students' involvement in like the things being done at home. So at the beginning, they were like helping bring water in and things like this. And now this is more like, I hope I can relax and hang out and watch Netflix.
Okay. So how they spend their time, their expectations of the student, our behaviors. All right. Anybody notice any change about attitudes or anything that might suggest possibly a change in attitudes? I see that, let's come back to that question as you're thinking about it. Jessica pointed out the formality of the speech changed, all right, which could be related to our attitudes in general, as well as just cultural practices. But any other thoughts about changing attitudes?
In 1960, they were saying how they felt so bad for the moms who made all the cheese sandwiches that the kids threw all over the place. And this one is more like selective. There's options for the food that they get to eat, so they get to be a little more particular.
Okay, right, okay. I'm curious how many of you really enjoyed your school lunches growing up. I know that can mean a lot of things. You mean the food I brought to school, the food the school served? Anybody want to share thoughts there? I saw Jessica, your feedback of which I interpreted as
Well, I mean, when I
Accessible.
started school in elementary school, we would get there early and we could go in and talk to the cafeteria workers while they were actually making food. Now all the food is brought in, pre-made, heated up and put back on, put out for the kids. So just
interesting.
in my time, it's changed a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this topic about food and our attitudes towards food is really an important part of the discussion about sustainability, and also one we should be sensitive to, no matter who we're talking with, because many of us don't have enough of it, and I mean, certainly in my town, there are many people that just aren't getting enough to eat today, and so, to talk about a student throwing away food somewhat like, "Oh, it was gross, it was soggy," it's like that is kind of offensive, right? And yet I understand the perspective of that student, and I've lived it, you know, of being in school cafeterias in places and times in communities um, where the luxury of throwing away food was there, and the idea of that being a luxury is what is can be very concerning. So that's that part of my message there is be sensitive, but also it's a really important point about sustainability is, you know, is our food in our diets and how we choose what we eat and what we throw away, what we save. All right, let's move on. Now, I'm going to pull back up this view and ask the question again, what is sustainability? And also, would you like to revise your definition? Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute to consider your definition. You can adjust it if you want to, and then we'll check in. So, next 60 seconds, go. About 15 seconds left. Okay. Would anyone like to share their definition or share a revised definition?
So this is Jessie. I can share my revised definition based on our readings here.
Okay, and Jesse, which one was yours previously?
Previously, I didn't share. Mine was ability to continue use at a current level.
Okay, so go ahead.
And the new one is material use so that all users can have adequate and sustained resources.
All right. Anybody else want to share? And I see Maggie, you said the ability to respectfully maintain resources, renewable or not. And Karen, you said to add to yours, use resources that are renewable and conserve those that are not renewable. And by the way, Karen, which one was yours? Was it consideration of the present and future needs of all living things, or the ability to maintain or use of resources in a way that they are not used up? 1, 2, or 3?
Mine was use of resources in a way that they are not used up quickly. And then I added that to that, use resources that are renewable.
Okay, great.
Serve those that are non-renewable.
Okay, so I'll just put a little arrow in here. Okay, any others people want to share? Okay, well that should do it for now. And I also noticed in the comments from previously, one I missed earlier, I wanted to mention was, Jessica, you had said um, when you were looking at differences through time that students were allowed to walk and bike to school um, alone. And that has been different in the past than it is now. So another interesting difference that we'll find they're all related, right, to the big systems that we live our lives by and that are all connected to this idea of sustainability. So here's another definition, and we're going to compare this definition to some of the ones we had and look at some more definitions. So Merriam-Webster says a method of using a resource so the resource is not depleted or permanently damaged. Okay. Another one, this is from the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development, and this is really pulled from a definition of sustainable development, meaning sustainable activities of humans to make a living. That's what I think of as what development means, but sustainable development as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Okay, and here's another one. And this one's from the Project Wild Guide. Sustainable living means that humans live within the carrying capacity of the ecosystem they inhabit. An ecosystem's carrying capacity is the maximum number of inhabitants that can be supported in an environment without degradation or loss of essential natural resources, such as food, water, and shelter. Okay, and so it's interesting, you know, the definitions of sustainability are really tricky because we often don't start off in a place on the same ground or the same set of assumptions. So one question we might want to ask ourselves is, what is it we're trying to sustain? Are we trying to sustain eventually a certain carrying capacity of humans? And what is that carrying capacity? You know, a professor of mine once said, by his estimate, it's about 13 billion people, but, and here's the but, it might mean that everybody lives in dormitories and eats a lot of mung beans, you know, and that's different than sustaining what a lot of people or how people live now in North America, I would say. I'm not sure everyone wants to live that way. But if we're talking about maximum number that an ecosystem can support, well, that's one way to think of what can be sustainable. So what is it we're trying to sustain, right? So then that connects with lifestyles, with preferences, with fairness, right? And we start thinking more about future and present and past. This is an image from Shelburne Farms, a quote that they had painted on their building. And this is, sustainability is another word for justice. For what is just is sustainable, and what is unjust is not. And that's from Matthew Fox. And this is on the Sustainability Academy at Lawrence Barnes in Burlington, Vermont. So here we're starting to connect it to justice. Okay. And then some more ideas on this big ideas of sustainability from the Sustainable Schools Project and the Children's Environmental Literacy Foundation. And it's this vine of all these ideas that tie into it at the bottom with equilibrium and long-term effects and ability to make a difference, fairness, place, limits, change over time, cycles, interdependence, diversity, systems, community. And then at the end of this vine, 3 factors: environmental integrity, social equity, and economic vitality. So the economic, the social, and the environment, those three hubs, all closely connected with how we can maintain a system. What I really liked about this graphic is a little call out down at the bottom, which I'll highlight in this next slide, and that is the words of one of the students at that academy. Sustainability means doing more good than harm with the people around us and the stuff we have. Okay, so if you do this activity with students and you get to the point where you're talking about helping people and doing good for other people, I think that's a great goal, a great jump to make. Okay, and so we've already done this part and we've shared it, but you know, to me that work never ends, and thinking about what we think of as sustainable and what kind of system or lifestyle we are willing to have for the greater good. All right. So we have about 10 minutes left, and we'll have some time for discussion here. And then I'm going to give you a homework assignment and an incentive to do the homework assignment, other than, of course, the great learning that you'll experience if you choose to do it, which is your main incentive, right? How about comments and questions? I'll start with the first one. Who thinks, like, with the audiences you work with, or the students you work with, or you might call them the participants, depending on your situation, would you change anything about this activity to make it work? Does anything come to mind with how you might change this activity?
This is Jessie. I think that I would add art into this. I would have them draw, you know, what the scenes that they see in their head when we read each of the captions. But I think I'd also have to have some kind of visual to show the kids. It's really hard for them to, you know, think what was school like in the 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they think, oh my God, they went outside and they picked apples, and they're thinking of a tree next to their school maybe, and they can't imagine that there would be apples there. So I think it would just have to have some visuals, but then also get that artistic ability in there and have them draw as they went along.
Oh, I like that a lot. You know, and there's a lot of people that have never seen an apple tree, so they might not even know they grow on trees, right? But that's such a good point. Wow, that's great. Okay, I'm going to ask the next question as well. This activity, these letters that were written, how might they be different in 10 years from now? And actually, that's a question you would ask your students, because this activity ends with the students writing the letter. Okay, writing a letter to their, it could be their grandmother or to someone in the family about their day and what they might experience, say, 20 years from now. What would you put in that letter? And let's just take one or two ideas about maybe relating to water or food or transportation or energy use. Any thoughts?
No one's even leaving their house to go to school.
Okay, right?
Yeah, the energy consumption with everybody virtual right now is, you know, above and beyond even what it was in the 2019, you know, reading. So,
But less gas maybe for cars.
What a great topic around energy use, right? Like, and sustainable energy use. Like what's going on with the current, you know, learning from home, and connects to transportation certainly too, with things like flights and driving cars. Okay, Sarah says there will be less meat consumption, more plant-based alternatives. A great segue into learning about uh, our food industry. And by the way, the activity Food Footprint in Project Wild updated in 2018. Check it out. It ties in very much to this topic. All right, well, we're going to have to wrap it up. I am now going to give you the link to this slide presentation, and you can use it as your master copy. If you go online to projectwild.org and go to the online learning links, you'll be able to find another version that's almost identical. You could also use that as your master copy. But this one is in, you would want to clear, you'll want to, I don't think we actually manipulated any frames in this directly. The only ones we manipulated were on this slide, and this gives you the link to the master copy of that table, so you're all set there. Okay, so I'm copying and pasting the URL into the chat now, and you probably want to copy and paste this somewhere, even if it's in an email to yourself with the topic master copy of sustainability Project Wild, so you can easily find it later.
It's
It
coming
says
up
we
that
need access.
Sorry, say again.
It's telling us that we need access to that form.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now is change the permissions. So now anyone with the link can copy it and edit it. And even though it was in the view only mode, I think you can still make a copy of it. But you're going to want to do that. You're going to want to get to this presentation and then make a copy and change the name of that copy. Because chances are someone will start, if any of you start manipulating this copy, it changes it for everybody. And if you ever need a fresh copy, you can contact me or go online to projectwild.org to online resources. Okay, I'm going to need to wrap it up because in a few minutes I'm going to start the Wild Learning Lab for Changing the Land. And if you're signed up for that, I'll see you there. So that's all for me. Thanks, everyone.